This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org here on the first day of the Bilderberg meeting here in Dresden, Germany, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure to be joined by the one and only Charlie Skelton. Now, Charlie Skelton, I would say, is one of the best journalists, one of the most important journalists, especially when it comes to covering Bilderberg. He started out first hearing about the Bilderberg group, and then, Charlie, you thought it was a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. You thought this is just crazy people saying absolute absurd things, and then when you started covering it, you were like, holy crap, why am I being treated like a criminal? And you found out there's a lot more to the story than what the general public perceives. But Charlie, I wanted to ask you, with this year's list of members, with this year's kind of vague agenda that they released, what do you think are the most important factors to talk about this year at Bilderberg?
Well, the first thing I would say is the sheer number of politicians. It's a very political Bilderberg, it seems. You know, you've got two prime ministers, 4 finance ministers, a vice president of the European Commission. It's definitely a political summit, whatever else it is. And I mean, we can see the politicians coming in the kind of federal cars here. So that even if 3 members of the German cabinet are here, so it's a big deal politically, which obviously raises questions about lobbying, which, you know, apart from anything else.
Yeah. Every year at Bilderberg, it's something completely different, whether it's the attendees, whether it's the security, whether it's the reaction by these guys and how they treat us. But this year, you really see just the biggest, vaguest kind of agenda that they released. They said current events. They said China, Europe, middle class. This is their transparency on behests of the Bilderberg Group. But from your years of covering this, we do have extraordinary statements from Bilderberg members admitting the true power and influence of this group. What do you think are some of the most important statements, and what do you think the agenda will be really for this year's Bilderberg?
Well, I tell you what I will talk about is the fact that some of the Bilderbergers have started talking to the press a little bit more often now. And in fact, just the local Dresden paper has an interview this week with Henri de Castries, who's the chairman of Bilderberg. He's also on the board of HSBC, and he's tipped to be the new boss of HSBC. Well, he does what a lot of the Bilderberg insiders do, and frames the discussion about Bilderberg in terms of conspiracy theories. He uses it. In fact, you hear quite a few of the insiders talking about how, well, you know, it's a conspiracy theory this, it's a conspiracy theory that, because they want that to be the language used about their meeting. Because as soon as you start talking in those terms, rationality flies out the window, and you can no longer really describe what you're seeing. Because, you know, when they say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, that people think that these people are trying to take over the world. No, that's not the case. It's not the case in those easy to throw away terms. What is true is that these are global companies with global ambitions and globally sized hedge funds and transnational banks. These financial entities do have global ambition, so absolutely they have an ambition of globalization. So, you know, that is a one world vision, but suddenly to couch that in terms of conspiracy theories, it just immediately deflates the critical thinking and throws rationality out the window. So I much prefer talking in terms of things like lobbying, which is very easy to do in an Airbus Deutsche Bank sponsored event.
Exactly, and we've seen, you know, Charlie, you've been doing this, I think, a little bit longer than me, but we have tried every possible way to reach out to the organizing committee, to reach out to the individuals, to talk to them. I can't tell you how many Bilderbergers I talked to, and was just like, let's bring out some transparency, let's bring out some openness, and it never happens. And of course, a lot of people speculate, and a lot of people say, well, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, but ultimately, we have no freaking clue, because they have this place locked down like Fort Knox, and whenever you try to do a real serious job as a journalist to cover this, you get treated like a criminal. And this year has been especially pretty crazy for me. Last year there were in your hotel room, the police officers who were harassing. Now they're in my hotel room this year. Can you tell us just some of the things that you have been dealing with this year alone, and how is it different when it comes to their reaction? Because I know we both talked to the the organizing committee, and just tell us how this year is different.
Well, I luckily haven't taken the brunt of things. You seem to have done, so, you know, that's a good thing. Maybe you should have done what I did when I had them in my room. I just took a shower. I got so bored of them being there, I just nipped into the shower and then came back dripping wet. I was so angry they just wouldn't leave. Anyway, so tip for the future: take your clothes off. It was a sort of passive-aggressive way to deal with harassment. But well, one of the interesting things this year was seeing James A. Johnson, director of Goldman Sachs and board member of Bilderberg, sitting out and having a glass of wine yesterday. So I did go and say hello, and I did ask him to put in a word with Mr. De Castries and Mr. Halberstadt to see whether they would consider a press conference, because that's all we do. I remember when we saw them at the airport last year. We were just going, do you mind speaking to the press? Would you mind having a press conference? And funnily enough, if you look at their website, on their FAQ section, they say, well, we used to have a press conference, but we stopped doing it because the journalists weren't that interested. Well, I think it behoves journalists to tell them that we're interested. And I think that's something that we're trying to do. And I think once we get more and more journalists knocking on the door saying, look, do you mind just having a press conference and behaving like the political summit that you actually are, then I think maybe we'll get somewhere. But it's a slow process.
Yeah. It definitely is a very slow process, and these guys, I think, kind of embrace these kind of conspiracy theories, embrace this kind of stigma around them, and kind of use it in their favor to empower themselves over all of us. And that's why, we have, the public entrance here, and we've seen cars pull up front, and Charlie's been taking a lot of great photos of them and tweeting them, but there's also a back exit over there, and a lot of people with just totally blacked out windows are also attending here that we don't even know. And as we know, the agenda and the official list of Bilderberg releases is not always the same thing that actually happens there. It's not actually the same people that are actually inside of there as well. That's documented before. But my question is, with the bigger kind of general question, is Bilderberg even relevant to the world?
Well, I think if you look at the makeup of Bilderberg, by which I mean the steering committee, which is the kind of core governing body, they're the real members of Bilderberg. Definitely, they've shifted very noticeably into new technology and new media. They've got people like Peter Thiel, they've got Eric Schmidt, Craig Mundy, who's the first, I think, of the kind of Silicon Valley people on their board, and they've got Alex Karp from Palantir. So, and those people have then brought in other people to come along to the conference, like I'll pronounce his name wrong, I'm sure, Dennis Hassabis from Google DeepMind. And there's been last couple of years, artificial intelligence has been on the agenda, and we could see it's on the agenda from the people who are there. So this year we've got Altman, I can't remember his first name, Sam Altman maybe. He's the Elon Musk's co-director of OpenAI. So, they're really looking towards the future. I mean, Kissinger probably is looking towards AI for different reasons to the rest of us, seeing whether he can upload himself before he... I was going to say before he dies, but I'm not going to say that's a definite thing. I mean, I wouldn't want to assume anything. Yes, I think they're absolutely relevant, and they are showing themselves able to transform within the kind of power and money and the transatlantic establishment. They are still shifting towards a modern and vibrant, set of people and set of ideas. So yeah, they're still relevant.
My last question, Charlie, unless we want to go cover the police there who are talking to some protesters, your call, but we could walk over there slowly and talk if you want. But my last question is, what can we do? We've been doing this for a number of years. What can we do? Where do we need to go as the people outside to bring more kind of transparency, bring more relevance, bring more accountability to everything that's happening here?
I would have to say, from my point of view, keep changing the language. They want to change. They want to control the language about Bilderberg. We need to control it back, take back the language, frame it in ways that mainstream journalists and the general public can understand. So things like lobbying and transparency are absolutely the drums we have to keep beating, because they're relevant. People get the fact that they're important, and yeah. So if we can own the language of Bilderberg, then maybe one day we'll win the war.
Charlie Skelton, everybody. His link will be in the description below. Thank you so much, brother. We're going to go over there, see what they're talking about with the police. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're probably going to continue the coverage of what's happening here on another video. Subscribe. And again, thank you for everyone for supporting us on Patreon, for supporting us by donating to us and keeping this independent news organization alive for you and by you, because this is the only way we could come out here, do this job for you, because guess what? The mainstream media won't do it. Stay tuned, subscribe.